Hi, I'm Deb Curtis, and this is the Weekend Extra. We're talking tonight about love and how to speak the truth in love. And so I'm here with Jeff, and we're going to just talk a little bit more about the sermon. And so my first question to you, which I kind of thought it through tonight, and I was really stewing over it, was knowing that the world is going to hate us.
Yeah.
We go into this with already handicapped about how are we going to speak the truth in love to people who really hate us. So what's the starting point on that?
Yeah, it's very true. And that comes out of John 17, Jesus' prayer. You know, when he's praying for all believers, he's saying that, that they're going to be rejected and the evil one is going to attack us. And it's a tough thing. It's funny, I was talking to several parents tonight after the service, and these issues were coming up that today in our world, to tell you the truth it's considered hateful in many times. And so, like you said, we're at this disadvantage. If I'm called to love you, but you're kind of taught to receive my love as hate, what do I do about that? And so I was talking to a dad, and I said, I think there's a couple of things. One, you're going to have to stand for truth, right? So you don't necessarily throw that truth away, but you have to illustrate love. So I think in our world today, people don't believe what you say, they believe what you do. And if I look at you and say, I have to believe that your behavior is wrong or your choices are wrong, and you're upset by that. Oh, so you hate me, you don't want me around. No, you keep inviting, you keep loving, you keep welcoming that person. And I found over time and maybe over the years that I am very, very good friends with people that I disagree with very, very deeply. And they know it. They know that I disagree with them, but they also know that I love them. They know what I want them to believe and accept, and I know that they don't. And I feel loved by them too. But it takes time, and it takes relationships, and it takes proving that, so to say, by not cutting somebody off just because they disagree. So I think for the believer, that's a part of it. Where if we're going to say something is wrong, let's show up, serve, love, give, be generous, be compassionate, all those other things. And sometimes people will believe it. Sometimes they'll cut us off. And I think Jesus would say, right, that happens. People are going to hate you because of me.
Just thinking that through tonight, I was struck by the idea that love is the starting point, obviously. Yeah. Love is the starting point. And it should be so evident that you love that person that then when speaking truth comes along, it's not a big shock, right? It's not a big, oh my goodness, what are you doing? You almost get the opportunity to ask the question, do I have permission to speak truth to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Deb. And I think what happens a lot of times is we start with people's sin. And I don't think that's where Jesus is at. Jesus would say, I'm going to start with my relationship with you. So we'll jump right into, hey, my name's Jeff. Do you know that what you're doing is wrong? And if you build relationship over time, sometimes there's an invitation, and then you will be shut down and shut out sometimes too. You have to be prepared for that. But your sin is not the biggest deal. God's love is the biggest deal. And so what I find is this: most people are pretty open to God's direction until it gets to their sexual morality. So if I said God doesn't want us to hurt someone, he doesn't want us to steal from someone, he doesn't want us to lie to each other, that's unloving. He doesn't want us to be cruel, that's unloving. He doesn't want us to be greedy, that's unloving. He doesn't want us to be materialistic, that's unloving. We actually have all this ground of agreement. Usually we're talking about some sexual morality choice. You're living together, you're sleeping together, there's a divorce, there's sexual identifications. That's usually what we're talking. That's actually what we're talking about. And I found that we have a ton to agree on and build a relationship with. If I can do that, right? So that person might look at me and say, I think that the church has been wrong in how they've cast certain people out. A lot of times I can agree with that. I think it's wrong that you say that we should care for poor people and that the pastor flies on a Learjet. I'm like, I completely agree with you.
Right.
There's an amazing amount that we can agree with. And maybe by then we have a relationship and we can agree to disagree, or at least have an open conversation about it. So I think we run to soapboxes. I think other people do too. I don't think that's all the church that just does that.
Right.
There's a bunch of assumptions that come the other way. But if there's any relational way to break that through, that's when you get into those other things. If you have no relationship, what the Apostle Paul says is this. He says, what difference is it to me how outsiders live? So me looking at someone who's not a Christ follower and being upset about their lifestyle, Paul's like, why are you doing that? Of course they're going to live like that. And when I try to make that my first connection, I'm the street preacher screaming at the guy. I'm actually, I think, harming the gospel instead of helping it.
Yeah, because the way that they'll know us is by our love.
For each other,
right?
And that we're open to loving anyone. And that is, that, like we talked this weekend, that's going to involve some truth. How I tell that truth, when I tell that truth, the tone that I tell that truth in, me allowing truth to be spoken back to me, right? That's part of how you build a relationship. If I confront you in something in your life, but I'm not open to you talking to me, see, it's all of that, and it's what we're trying to get to with it.
Yeah. I think just to cap it off and sort of wrap up the weekend, I think it was great, the point that you made about doing all of this in love, but also delivery. Method is everything, right? So gentleness, respect. I mean, the Bible is very clear that those are the methods by which we deliver things that might be hard things, and that we start just from a place of love.
Yeah, I'm looking, and I'm saying, Paul says in Romans, he says, as much as it's up to you, live at peace with all men. So that means that when I'm delivering a difficult truth, I'm actually going to think through. I'm not going to do that off the cuff or in a sarcastic way. I'm going to think through that delivery, because that's part's up to me. Now, what I say, the Bible does not say this, but what I kind of add to it is, it's not always up to me to live at peace. Sometimes when they're angry and offended, I actually can't do anything about that. I tried, I did my best, relationship, all the rest, and they are rejecting, but they're not rejecting me, they're rejecting Christ. And Jesus is very clear. He says, don't be surprised when people hate you because of me. And that is something that believers have to bear, and that's part of it. So,
All right. That's the Weekend Extra, wrapping up here on Truth and Love. Thanks so much for joining us.